Hi guys, so I'm back with the third video in this series of 4 and today we're going to talk about the business of live music. As mentioned in my very first video, to understand an industry or a sector of an industry, it's really important to understand the key roles of the people that are involved in it that keep that industry moving. Hopefully some of you guys will have gone away already, done some research on some of the roles that I mentioned previously, but if not, I'd advise having a look at some of these roles. The role of the tour manager, booking agent, promoter, venue manager, front of house engineer, monitoring engineer, stage manager and lighting engineer. If you can get your head around some of these roles in terms of what some of these people do, it will give you a good understanding holistically of how the live music industry functions. Overall, you'll appreciate that the business of live music is usually predominantly focused around the ability for songwriters and performers to leave the house and to perform to people publicly. However, obviously due to coronavirus, this has somewhat changed that. Coronavirus has obviously changed how we can tour and perform generally in all parts of the world. So now we're having to think a little bit more innovatively about how we can actually make money from the live music industry during this time. Whilst lots of people have been talking about live streaming as a new concept, realistically the ideas behind live streaming have been around for some time. The idea of live streaming from the safety of your own home, a short performance of yours, isn't a particularly new concept. Glastonbury has obviously been broadcast live across the world for a number of years on the BBC. Coachella has also been broadcast live over YouTube with multiple camera angles and ways to engage in those performances from America. So I think it's important to acknowledge that whilst live streaming is semi-new to the current situation, the actual idea behind live streaming has been around for some time. So really it's now about, are there any opportunities here for you guys as musicians and artists to potentially look into? While we're going to talk more on live streaming a bit later, for the next few minutes I want to focus more on the traditional live music industry because it will return one day, and again, to look forward we have to be able to look back at what's happened also. Normally as a new artist you would have 2 options when it comes to live performances. In most cases, option number 1 would be that you do your research or speak to other artists in your local area, figure out who that local promoter is, get in touch with them and ideally try and get on a showcase event with other bands or other artists, MCs, songwriters performing at, or you would support another artist that promoter is putting a show on for. Option 2 would see you book your own venue, put your own show together and promote that as if you were the promoter. I think it's important to discuss some pros and cons of both scenarios. Whilst option 1 is typically more the route that an artist might go down early on in their career, it is important to remember that there are some downsides to that situation. Whilst you do have the hassle taken out of the situation in the sense that you don't have to book a venue, you don't have to deal with any of the logistics, find a sound engineer, any of those kinds of things that perhaps a promoter may do for you, you do still have to bear in mind that you won't earn much money from performing in that manner early on in your career. Typically promoters will give £1 to £2 per ticket back to an artist and possibly pay for a few drinks for them, but otherwise that will typically be the only money an artist will make. Whilst it is important to get opportunities whilst an artist starts out, you also do need to be thinking that you guys are in fact small music businesses. So therefore any income you can earn can be invested back into the business to be used at a later stage. The second option that I mentioned obviously does require more effort on your part. You do need to find a venue, you do need to negotiate a deal with that venue, and then you do need to work out how the event's actually going to come together. You'll need to book support acts for your own performance and this kind of thing. However, most small venues, certainly in Manchester, will usually give you a fixed price, which will be for the hire of the venue, a sound engineer, any equipment required such as a PA system or lighting. The only thing you'll need to generally provide is somebody on the door to check tickets or sell tickets, and occasionally somebody to man the cloakroom. Some venues, however, will let you take the money from the cloakroom, which is a nice extra bit of money in the artist's pocket. One of the upsides to option 2 is of course that you'll gain a new skill set. You'll suddenly go from not knowing how to put on an event to being able to put on an event. Additionally, any money that you make on the night of the show or in advance of that will be yours once you've paid for your costs. Again, if you think back to the other option, if you take 20 people to a show that somebody else has booked for you, a promoter, and maybe you get paid £1 to £2 a head, the maximum you're going to earn really is about £40 for that show. And whilst that might seem like a reasonable amount of money when you're starting out, you'll soon realise that that money will not stretch much past the Ubers home. As you've probably guessed, I'm a big fan of option 2 because I think it really helps artists to develop as professionals and expand their network, whilst also generally earning a little bit more money for themselves. The other upshot of option 2, generally speaking, is if you are able to sell out a small show in Manchester, then hire a slightly bigger venue and sell that show out, and then hire a slightly bigger venue and sell that out over a number of maybe 6 to 9 months, perhaps putting on a show every 3 months or so. What you'll often find is that bigger promoters will be much more attracted to you because they can see that you're earning money and actually attracting people in off your own back. Therefore, when you do start working with promoters, you might be in a much better position to negotiate and actually get more money. Generally speaking, I believe we're in an industry which is very much a DIY focused industry. In that respect, what I mean is you need to do it yourself. I very much have a philosophy which is build it and they will come. And they usually being the wider music industry. If you can build up a series of successful shows, getting more and more people to those shows, even if it's an incremental change of 10 or 20 people extra per show every time you do one, that is an increase in your business. That is a development of your worth as a business. Whether it's increasing your live numbers, increasing your streams online or your merch sales, this is all very important in terms of attracting the wider music industry's interest. At present, as we've said, unfortunately coronavirus is here and it is something that we have to try and work around. So we do need to think about alternatives in this scenario. I would of course recommend trying to work with the technology that's available from the comfort of your own home and try and create live streaming opportunities for yourself at present. Have you given any thought to doing any performances on Zoom? That might be an idea that you want to consider. The benefit of using a platform like Zoom is obviously that you can password protect that space, which whilst it keeps out any negative people and it keeps more of the positive vibes inside, the upshot of that also is by password protecting the Zoom room, it does also give some sense of exclusivity that this is not a free-for-all and not everyone can attend. So if you're looking for an opportunity which provides you to have a small amount of people in a space that enjoy your performance and there's a sense of exclusivity there, it may be worth considering looking at Zoom as some technology to use during this time. Equally, if you think a more free-for-all approach is a good idea at this stage, maybe you just want to hit as many people as possible, then of course, IG Live is a great tool to use. If you do want to try more of a free-for-all approach and just try and reach as many people as possible, obviously IG Live is a good tool to do that. Do be mindful of the fact that obviously people that do want to be negative can enter that space and be present during that time, but fingers crossed you've got a positive audience who will respond well to what you're doing. Perhaps a final thought for this video should be that at a time like now, whilst coronavirus is here and things are a little bit more difficult to function as normal, and I don't just mean yourselves, I'm also talking about the wider music industry, perhaps now is a time to consider reaching out to some bigger people that you've not had in your network previously. Maybe these are some producers that you've not connected with previously, or a vocalist that you've not connected with, a songwriter, a manager, a small record label that's in Manchester. What I'm finding particularly is that more people that work in the wider music industry have a little bit more time at the moment to give feedback and correspond with people that perhaps they otherwise might not have time to speak to. My advice is to use the time well, but if you are going to contact people in the industry for feedback or for ideas or just generally to connect, try and do that on a professional level. DMs are a good place to start a conversation, but it's not a particularly professional platform to try and further a working relationship. So my advice would be is to try and get that person's email address as you work towards building up a rapport with that person, so then you can transfer that conversation to a slightly more professional domain to try and see if they can help you further. I hope this video has been useful. Video number 3 focused on the business of the live music industry / how to work through coronavirus in a live music industry. I hope there's been some useful points made in this video, and the 4th and final video will be coming to you shortly, which will focus on promoting yourself, some tips and tricks there around self-marketing, which I think will be really useful to you as you've got some finished product.